This is a short video on SimCity 2013, a game that I think is a masterpiece, but I know that this type of stuff is very subjective, and I wouldn't imagine there's many other people out there that share that view. SimCity 2013 got panned when it came out because of various reasons, one of them being the size of the space that you were allowed to build in. So rather than having big cities, you really had small towns. Well, the first thing that I wish Maxis had done, instead of going bust, instead of kind of giving up the chase, would have been to make all of the different towns seriously interactive. And I know that they say that they are interactive, and when you click on certain things you get a little bit of data. Like I'm being told here that there's a few, what does it say? There's 377 students coming from that town to this town, whatnot, and there's a certain amount of goods coming, but all this stuff is really just cosmetic. It's not really, there's not really very much at all happening between one town and another. If they had made it so that there genuinely was lots of stuff going on between all the towns, and that whatever you were to do in one place would have a significant effect on the other, I think it would have made a huge difference, because you may not have been able to build a massive, colossal city, but you would have been working with a large area of towns that were all dependent on each other. And for instance, what I mean by that is if they were really linked, then if you were to build, let's say here in Whitewater Crossing, if you were to build a tourist town here, a big tourist town, and you spend a couple of hours really getting that going, and you have all the casinos and you develop it, and then you start zoning residential in the other towns, everybody would just immediately go to this town to work, and maybe people would not, maybe the houses you put in would quickly become abandoned, because nobody would want to live in any of these towns because all the stuff is going on here. In the same way, if you just put a university here, you would create a situation where all the other towns would be sending all their students here. This town would be filled with young people, and that would change the dynamic of the town. I mean, I can think of lots of other ways that would have made that very interesting, but I don't want to make this video too long. But just to say, the way it is now, it never really gave me the feeling that there was any serious thought really put into the linking of them, because I would imagine I'm not the only one who's done this. I've often built a town here with lots of people, and they'll all be complaining that there's no work. So then I'll go to the next town and I'll build lots of factories, and I'll put the regional bus depots and everything in, and you think logically people will just go from this place to that place to work, but they don't. The factories here shut down, and you're getting a message saying there's nobody to work in the factories, and it asks you to zone in residential, that makes a nonsense of the connectivity. So that's one thing that I think, if they just kept coming up with things to make it interactive, you would have had so much more to think about when you're working on each town. The second thing, which I think would have been, it would have gave the game a lot of longevity, would have been if they had continued, instead of going bust obviously, if they had continued to download, let's say, various updates, or even downloadable content. I mean, even if I had to buy it, it wouldn't have bothered me. But let's say they downloaded more and more different types of industries, for instance. Like maybe they could have downloaded a pack that just dealt with agriculture or forestry, so that you could have a town the size of this, and all it would be was building farms, cutting wood, things like that. And that would also have an impact on the idea I was talking about a minute ago, about the connectivity of the different towns. Because if you had a town that was just for agriculture, just for that particular type of commerce, then you'd have a specific type, maybe a specific type of buildings. You'd have people coming, a certain type of people living here. I don't know. It just would have gave the thing a dynamic, and you could also download lots if they had created more downloadable content, like other types of industries, and perhaps the specific industry would have changed the dynamic of the buildings or whatever. That would have gave the game again an extra dimension, because for me what I enjoyed about this game was the management of I won't call it a city, the management of the towns. And at the beginning I just found it so absorbing, and I got so obsessed with all the stuff that you could do at the beginning. It really was a game that had it had so much content. The great works, for instance, kept me going for they gave me an awful lot of gameplay. And just like I've said about the industries, there was really great potential, I think, to create lots more of the great works. That's something else I wish they'd done in more kind of downloadable form. They could have created more great works. Like, I would have loved to have an airport, but a proper airport, one which would have been the size of a whole square, because the international airport they have is kind of ridiculous. But to have a great work which is the size of a square, and then also to have different great works that you could incorporate into your town, so that they wouldn't be just in a spot outside on their own like the 4 great works are. And then once you had done the considerable amount of work necessary to create that work, it would again have some kind of a dynamic effect on the town and the entire region. That's one of the things about SimCity that I really enjoyed, and which I have not found in any of the other games I've played, and which is really the reason why I never got into City Skylines very much. To me, there is really not really any content in City Skylines. It's a fine game if you just want to, create a nice looking city, but you don't want to manage the city. You don't want to be occupied with different things. You just want to build stuff. Then it's fine. It's kind of like a Photoshop of city building, but that's not really what keeps me occupied. And then lastly, the third thing and maybe the most important thing, because it's kind of connected to the first 2 things I've mentioned, and that is, I wish that they would really work on a proper statistics package. I know in all of these games, including this one, we're giving our breakdowns and our figures and things here, but they're kind of, again, just like they're cosmetic. It's just like a bit of an attachment. And first of all, there's just not enough information here for someone like me who likes this kind of thing. And secondly, these figures just don't make any sense. Anybody who's played this will know what I mean. These figures make sense if you've got 2,000 people, or even less. If you've got about 100 people, you can look at these things and they're correct. But if you go over 1,000, they just get ridiculous. They don't make any sense. And besides not making sense, they're it's too limited. I think the reason for that with some of these games, and it's like that in all the games, including, especially, I was playing Tropico 5 recently, and it's the same thing. It would be great if these companies could actually hire on somebody who actually, a team of people who actually work on that area, because, and create a proper program for figures and logistics for the statistics. I don't know what the word is I'm supposed to use there, but I mean, there are people who work, city developers and people who work in areas where they go through all of these massive figures to try and, let's say, if they're building infrastructure or reorganizing areas of a city. So if one of these companies could just hire some of these people and actually incorporate a proper program of statistics, so that when you look at it, if it says you've got 20,000 workers, you do have 20,000 workers, you can count on the statistics. For someone like me, who really likes to get into the detail of these games, I mean, if I was sure that the figures weren't incorrect, then I would gladly spend hours trying to solve problems, trying to figure out why a certain factory is not doing as well as another factory, if there were legitimate reasons, and if the statistics would tell me exactly that there's exactly how many people are working in the factory, exactly how many university people it needs, there's so many things that I would like to have had listed that would help me to organize and manage a city, and this doesn't have it. And of course, if you had statistics like that, it would also mean that you'd have lots of information about the whole region and lots of information about the effect of tourism and the great works and everything. I played Tropico 5, like I was saying, and they tried to do a little bit of that, where you can see how many people are working in each plantation and eventually in the cigar factories and whatnot. And that was an interesting concept. They're going the right way, but again, their figures made no sense in the Tropico game. To me anyway, it didn't make any sense. That game suffers from the same problem that all these simulation games do. Things happen that are just totally ridiculous. And that's it. They're the three things. Nothing to do with the size, because the size of this game is good, because everything runs really, really well, because it's just a small square, and like I say, I quite like that aspect. That's about all I guess I have to say. Just those three things. The overhaul of the statistics, downloadable content for more industries, agriculture, forestry, and a greater connection between the towns in a region. I know people are not going to probably agree with much of that, but just to say, this is the first city building game I played, so it's probably got something to do with my liking for it. So on that bombshell, I will say goodbye.